How are you?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, I might put it on mute if I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, I might put it on mute if I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right, I might put it on.
Uh-oh. Good afternoon.
Tim.
Hey Sheila, how are you?
Okay, how you doing?
Doing okay. Saw your Seder table picture on Facebook.
That was fun. It was the most fun I've had in 3 weeks.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Hey, we're all doing the best we can given the
That's
situation
right.
we're in, at least
Right.
we have
Hey,
these ways
Bubba,
of having communicating.
why are you wearing a mask?
I'm in my office right now. I'm at work.
Oh, okay.
Been a
Okay.
while.
So what did you do, Tim?
We did a small with, the two of us Seder, but we did the full thing and we had a table. We weren't going to skimp on it. And it was fun. It was fine,
It's fine. Oh. I just saw Rena, then I didn't see her.
I know. Rena,
Oh,
yeah, there
there
they
it
are.
is.
They're there. I think they went out and then back in.
Hi, Rena. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Rena.
Hi. Let me check it.
Let me shuffle.
The closet. I don't know. No, it's fine.
How you doing, Rena?
Oh, hanging in. We just can't find something really important, and Jim's getting very frustrated.
Uh-oh.
Thank
Okay.
you. Yeah. I went to a cousin's Seder last night from Canada, Alberta, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Toronto.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's
All over
cool.
the place. Yeah. I saw your Sheila.
Yep. It was fun with the girls.
That's good.
Yep. So at least we
Good,
did
good.
the whole thing.
Yeah. Hi, Bubba.
He's at work, so I don't know if he's got
At
his.
work.
Okay.
He's in his office at the store.
Oh, all right.
I'm going to wait a couple minutes, see if we get a couple
Okay.
people, then I'll get started.
Yeah, I just spoke to Carol. She might come on. Carol Lurie, yeah. I'm surprised. Yeah, last week we had 7 or 8, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Where was it?
Well, I know Margie
Knock
was,
yourself.
Margie was here. Flo Knudsen was here.
Right.
Yeah.
Andrea,
Andrea, that's true.
Terry, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Rabbi coming?
I don't know what the rabbi's doing a children's Seder tonight. So I don't know if he's getting ready for that they're going to do for the people with young kids.
Yeah.
They've got something planned. I don't know, it involves teddy bears and it'll probably be cute.
Oh, cute.
That's cute. Sounds cute.
Yeah.
I thought you were doing it, Tim.
So, No, that's the rabbi. He's got kids. He's got all the kid stuff.
I know.
I don't have kid stuff.
Right, right.
So I think he and April have it all figured out what they're
I'm sure
doing.
they do.
Yeah.
Did he find what he wanted, Rena?
Yeah, he did. Well, you know, when you're in a situation like this, you put something away and you don't remember where you put it.
That's the story of my life.
I
Yeah.
do that all the time. I do that a couple times a day
You're
sometimes.
right, Tim. You're right.
I do. I do it with my, well, I don't use car keys much anymore, but I used to do
Oh,
that with
yeah,
car
yeah.
keys all the time.
I'll be right back. I have to get my fan. I'm having a hot.
Okay.
Tim, to solve that problem, put a little hook. Do you have a garage?
No. But what I
You don't
did
have a
is
garage.
we do have a hook though with a coat thing inside the door.
Right, you come
Now,
in and put it on the hook.
right, they go on the hook. That's what I do now, so I don't have that problem anymore.
Right. Oh, Rena's hot.
Today's very windy out.
Yeah, I
Yes,
just
very
took a
good.
nice long walk. It's gorgeous out. Just
It is. It's pretty, but it's really windy. I mean, I was surprised at how windy it is.
Yeah.
But yesterday was so warm. Ooh.
Yeah.
Opal. It's opal.
All right, at 1:04, 2 minutes. I'll start, and if people have to join after that, that's fine. They can just jump in wherever we are. So
It'll be intimate.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, when we do Torah study, so we do Torah study at the synagogue.
Oh, that's
Sometimes it's just 4 or 5 people. So
Right. I see, who's Opal? There's a name Opal, but I don't see the picture.
I don't know.
I don't know. Camera's not on for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Terry's R-Pad. Terry's.
That's Terry Lowry.
Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
Terry Lowry. She joined us.
The court will hear arguments.
Terry's.
I don't know who Terry R. It's Terry Lowry, I know.
It's
Yeah,
Terry
but
Lowry. For
Terry-
some reason it says Terry R's iPad, but it's Terry Lowry because she was on the last time, and
Yeah.
that was the same sign-in name that she had.
Where are you going to? Oh, well. Okay. Well, Opal, whoever you are,
Welcome, Holly.
well, there's somebody.
I don't know. Holly.
Hi,
Hi, Holly.
how
Hello.
are you guys?
We're
Hi,
good.
how are you?
Good.
Good.
All right, everybody. I'm going to kind of get started here. We might get some people who join us along the way. That's okay. For those of you who've joined, I always start with a kind of a Devar Torah for about 8-10 minutes, and then some questions and discussion and commentary following that. So as I've done in the past, I'll start with the blessing over the study of Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with the words of Torah. All right, so this week, because we are in the midst of Passover, we interrupt our reading of Leviticus because there are special readings that are assigned to the different festivals and holidays on our calendar. So they've assigned special Torah readings and Haftarah readings for those particular Shabbats that fall in the vicinity of those holidays. And this is one of those. So we're actually going back to Exodus, to the book of Exodus for this Shabbat that is in the midst of our Passover celebration. And in this Torah portion, we are shown a Moses. And as you recall, the Torah tells us that Moses was a bit of a reluctant leader. And Moses is trying to get a promise from God to help him to lead the people. We just came off of the golden calf incident, just prior to the section we're reading this week. And so Moses not happy, God not happy. So Moses wants some reassurance that God will kind of be with him in leadership. God wants, he wants God to know that I need you. I don't know that I can do this myself. So I know the people transgress with the golden calf, but Moses asks for God to be with him. And so God says, sure, I will be with you. I promise you, I'll be there. Then Moses, to use a good word, Moses has a bit of chutzpah, to use a word here. He asks God in chapter 33, verse 18, he says to God, oh, let me behold your face. So Moses feels the need, maybe that little bit of extra reassurance, to see God's face. It's kind of a final sign from God that God will truly be his partner in leadership. And it's kind of important to stop and ask ourselves right now, have any of us ever in the back of our minds or even the forefront of our minds wish that we could see God? That maybe God would reveal himself to us as some sort of tangible being, something that we could actually reach out and touch. And somehow if God said, sure, he said, I will agree to your request, do you think it would make our belief in or our faith in God stronger, or might it somehow weaken our faith in God? So, and how would we feel if we actually were granted a one-on-one encounter with God? How would we feel if we were able to see God's face in the flesh? Because let's face it, sometimes, at least for some of us, it's a lot easier to have faith or a belief in something that's bigger, grander, more mystical than in something that is human flesh and blood. So if we really anthropomorphize God, which that's such a great word, we anthropomorphize God, giving him human characteristics, would he become sort of just like another being and maybe too much like we are, too much like ourselves? Because we know if we put our faith in other people sometimes, that other people can disappoint us, other people can let us down. So it's hard to know where our faith would take us if we were permitted a face-to-face encounter with God. It's something we can discuss and think about. So in this portion, God tells Moses that no, you're not going to see my face. That's not going to happen. You will see me in the goodness that I display to you. And you know what? Actually, you're going to see my back. You're going to see my back, Moses. That's about all of me that you're going to see. Nothing more than that. Sorry, that's it. And I guess I can kind of understand that too, because, sometimes I think all we see is God's back. And what I mean by that is that if we see someone's back, it suggests to us that that person, when we see their back, is moving away from us. They're going away, they're leaving. And they're moving on, they're departing. They've passed us, they're on the other side. And I think sometimes with God, we kind of are that way as well today. Once we realize that God has been there, he's been gracious to us, he's offered us some kind of help or some kind of solace, he's gotten us through some challenge, some problems, some difficulty, and then we get on the other side of it. Well, we're whole again because God gave us his grace and his intervention, he got us through it. We didn't really see God at that moment when we were struggling, but afterwards we think back and we feel that thankfulness, that sense that God was there for us, and now God is moving on. He was there when we needed him. So if we turn and look, God's moving on. We see God's back. Couldn't see it when I was in the midst of my struggle necessarily, but if I turn and look, I can see God's back. It's not like God is leaving us because his essence is still going to surround us, but the direct intervention of what God did for us is over. And we were just too caught up in the pain or the struggle to notice when God might have been right there in front of us or right there beside us. So I don't know about you. I don't think I possess the chutzpah that Moses had to ask to see God's face. But like Moses, I do sense God's presence in my life, and I'm sure you do as well. But sometimes I only realize it after the fact, after I've needed God's help and I'm through it. I think the most revealing part of this Torah portion, though, happens when God reveals his attributes. It's important to take note that when we look at these verses in the Torah, they're in quotation marks. And when something's in quotation marks, it does mean that that person is speaking. So God is revealing himself, speaking in his own words to Moses. And And God explains to Moses and to us as readers of the Torah that he has all these attributes. He's merciful. He's slow to anger, compassionate. God is gracious. God is abounding in kindness. God is truthful. God is forgiving of iniquity, transgression, and sin. But he does make it clear that sometimes his mercy has its limits. And this is God saying this to Moses directly. So God is saying, these are all the things that I am. And if we look at that list of attributes, things like kindness and truthfulness and being forgiving and being merciful, I think we can see that those are attributes that we probably should have as well if we are trying to live ethical lives or godly lives. And we want to treat our fellow human beings as we ourselves would like to be treated. So in that sense, God becomes the perfect role model for us, because all of those attributes are things that we also would hope that we have in ourselves as we go through the world on a day-to-day basis, and as we encounter the people in our lives, whether they're family, friends, coworkers, whatever. And we have to be honest, it's not always easy to live up to those godly expectations, to those attributes at all times. We fall, we stumble, we fail, or as we say on Yom Kippur, we miss the mark. But we know that God gives us the opportunity to make things right again. You know, we're not just stuck there in the bad state. I'll just say personally for me, I would like to think that I share the godly attribute of being slow to anger, but I'm not. I actually get angry too easily sometimes, too quickly. And then when I do that, I sometimes say things that are not really very kind, maybe a bit inappropriate. I behave in a manner that's really not very much like God would expect or very godlike at all. But I know God is merciful, God is compassionate, and God can forgive me. And I'll tell God that I'll be better. I'll do better. I'll behave in a better way. And I will. And I do. Well, at least for a while anyway, at least for a while, you know. And I want to close today. I was looking at different Torah interpretations and different Torah things that people were writing about this. And I came across something on the URJ website that was just written right now. And it was written by a man named Cantor David Berger. And he is at Isaiah Israel Congregation in Chicago, Illinois. He's written a very meaningful devar for this Torah portion for Passover 2020. And he kind of ties in with what we are facing right now with the whole pandemic that we're going through and our shelter in place and whatever. So as our communities, our world's going through this troubling time, I wanted to take a few of his ideas and share them with you. And I'm going to quote him now. This is directly from his Devar Torah. Canterberger says that he sees this Torah portion as, quote, Torah for troubled times, for moments in history like the one we find ourselves in today, when it seems as if God has abandoned humanity to its worst inclinations, end quote. He then goes on to point out further on in his Devar that God commands Moses in verses 21 and 22 in chapter 33 to station himself on a rock. He just says to Moses, put yourself over there on the rock. So he gives Moses a certain vantage point from which to witness God passing by, that moment when he will see God's back. God further tells Moses that he will shield Moses with his hand as he passes by, you know, kind of a hand up, but that's all he's going to get. And I think when I try to think about this, each of us also, when we encounter God or we encounter anything in our lives, a lot has to do with our vantage point. Where are we? What is our vantage point when we are looking out? What is our vantage point on God at any given moment? And that sometimes if we feel a bit overwhelmed by, you know, all the frightening news that's out there right now, you kind of get, you know, crushed by the weight of the world, and it seems to be just constantly bad. The world seems to have just gone completely awry. Then maybe what we need to do, at least sometimes, is change our vantage point. Maybe we need to turn off the TV. Maybe we need to turn off the radio. Maybe we need not to look at all the bad headlines on Facebook. Yes, there's good stuff on Facebook, but let's face it, people post a lot of stuff too that's newsworthy and about this and that and whatever. Maybe we just need to turn it off. Maybe turn on some music. Just sit back and listen to some music. Take a walk. I mean, we live in a beautiful part of the country that is so gorgeous in the spring. We look around the Savannah area and it's getting green and flowers are blooming and it's a beautiful time to go out and just appreciate the colors that are out there. Maybe it's time to open up a book and read something that's uplifting. So if we do those things, at least for a while, our vantage point changes. We move away from all the bad news. And we can take a few minutes to appreciate God's hand and the wonders of nature, in maybe the melodies and the lyrics of some of our favorite music, our favorite composers, beautiful words that somebody's put on a page, whether it's a novel or a poem or whatever. At the conclusion of his Devar, Canterberger has a couple sentences that I think sum up the difficult times that we find ourselves living in. So he writes, and again, this is a quote directly from Canterberger. He says, on this Shabbat of Passover, our Torah reading reminds us of the strength our tradition offers us to walk with God and our people through the full journey of our liberation. Freedom is found not only in the big miracles that we sang about in the Seder, but also in the constant vigilance that it takes not to re-enslave ourselves to despair, to disbelief, and to the crushing feelings of hopelessness that the world can push us toward. We need to station ourselves on the rock and feel God even through all the apparent hiddenness of this moment, end of quote. So I want to close by saying, let's remember that our Jewish tradition often refers to God as Tzur Yisrael, the rock of Israel. When times are troubled and chaotic, like they are right now, let us remember that God is our rock, that we have Tzur Yisrael, that we can depend upon the steadfastness of that rock, and that we can turn to that rock and look to that rock or our God for protection. So that's kind of what I had for today for a Devar Torah. First of all, just any comments anybody wants to share just in a general way right now?
Well, I think it's very positive.
The Torah portion?
Yeah, I mean, there's something else I read though, really about the earth. It's not really positive. It's that the earth at this point is fed up and has to cleanse itself.
That's interesting, Rena, because I've read something very similar to that just in the last day or two.
I wonder if it's the same thing.
Could be.
Right?
Well, when you look around, look at what's going on. I don't know if you've seen anybody of the pictures of Los Angeles with no smog.
Yeah. With no smog, right.
When's the last time we saw Los Angeles without smog?
Right.
A friend of my daughter's, my older daughter's, is a friend in India. And he sent me a picture, I put it on Facebook. For the first time, you could see the Himalayas in 30 years. And it's gorgeous. You see the Himalayas in the background, and it's beautiful. Yeah, 30 years. And the dolphins are swimming in Venice.
I know, I saw the pictures of the canal.
Did you see that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
So there's like miracles happening all over the earth.
So is the earth, which in a sense could be God, sending us a message here, perhaps, that, we've been abusing our planet for a long, long time.
Right.
And, remember in the Torah, God promised after in the Noah story, God promised that he would not ever destroy the world with a flood. He made that promise to us as a people that would never happen. So we're not going to have to worry about building an ark, any one of us. But is this perhaps, it sounds awfully strange perhaps, but is this a way where, God, i.e. Mother Nature, i.e. Mother Earth, whatever, is kind of correcting some of what we've done as abusive caretakers of the planet? I don't know.
I agree. And you know what? We've got to listen to him afterwards, because we can't go back to what the abuse we were doing before. It has to change.
I agree. If any of this, it's a horrible thing we're going through, and people are dying and they're suffering. But if we just go back to doing whatever we were doing before, then what have we learned from that?
Nothing. So we're not listening. He's giving us a message, Tim, right? Yeah.
And I think we need to listen, and I think we need to act on the message. I mean, God is there. And, you know, as I said, he's a rock, and he's got all those great attributes that he reveals to Moses in this Torah portion. But it also says right in that particular portion that there are limits, that God, I'm merciful, I'm a merciful
Right.
God, but I have my limits. Did we push God to the limits?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we don't know, but if we're looking at these possibilities, you know, God says, I'm merciful. Yes, I am, but I have my limits, and my mercifulness will run out at a point. So, you know, again, I don't know, but it's something to think about, really. But anybody else, any comments they want to, just anything that's going through your head?
Everything's good.
Go ahead. Bubba, you want to say something?
No, thank you. That's
Okay. I'm just going to ask a question. So, you know, God says to Moses, no, you're not going to see my face. That's just not going to happen. I'll tell you who I am. I'll tell you what my attributes are. You'll see my back, but that's as far as it goes. You're going to put yourself on the rock, and you're going to see the back as I pass. If somebody asked you today, just right now, off the top of your head, what is your concept of God? When you think about God, what's in your head is your concept of God?
I don't think he's human.
No.
He's not like us, you know,
Right.
but I'd like to know more of a force that you can feel.
Okay.
I think it has to do with faith, what you believe in your heart, and good and bad inside of you yourself.
So the idea that God kind of is within us. True. Anybody else? What's your concept of God? When you think of God, what is in your head? What's in your mind when you try to get a concept of God?
Just feel the presence.
What?
I just feel the presence around me. You go out in the yard and you see the trees and the cats and all. I don't know. Just feel strong presence.
Something that's there. Can't see it. Can't really touch it, but you know it's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Concept of God. Nobody says the word
I have
God.
a question. Sorry, Sam, for you. What do you mean by back, God's back? Can you explain that?
That's
It
just
was let God see his face.
what he tells Moses. He says, you know, Moses says, can I behold your face? And God just says, no. The only thing you're going to see is my back. That's it.
I understand, but what kind of a back is it? Is something?
I don't know.
Is it a human back, Rena?
I don't know. But we
God could be telling you, you know, you be ahead of me, but you can follow me.
I guess they don't know.
That's a good idea. That's good, but I like that,
Yeah,
Bubba.
what
The
does
idea
Bubba
that, yeah,
say?
you're going to see my back because you can follow me, or you can choose not to. I mean, you know, it's a choice you can make.
Mhm.
So that could be true. I mean, I don't know what God's back looks like because I don't know what God looks like. If somebody asked me to draw a picture of God, I mean, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that.
Nobody can.
Right. I mean, we know that artists, I mean, of course, if you go to the Sistine Chapel and you see artist depiction, you know, of God reaching his hand out to Adam and whatever, so where we get this old man in a white beard and whatever. But in Judaism, we don't do that. Judaism does not take.
Oh, there's Bubba.
Yeah.
Tim, can I ask you a question?
Glorifies God. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late.
Tim,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I don't know what happened to the time. I was having so much fun eating.
yeah, we're gonna give you detention, Tammy.
That's
Being
right.
late.
That's my problem.
I'm
Okay,
gonna
sorry
have to write
about
you a
that.
late slip. I'll write you a
Tim,
late
can I
slip.
ask you a question?
Sure.
If he saw God's back, now when you hear the word back, if that's what's written,
Right.
back has a connotation of belonging to a human
Right.
or an animal. I mean, it's a
Right.
back.
But something
So
real.
yeah, exactly. So if it's back, then was there a head attached? Were there arms? I mean, that's what I mean. Back to me is a connotation of someone human.
I know. Me too.
Yeah.
Or did the writers of the Torah have to put it in a term that would make sense to us? Because as we read
Yeah.
this thousands of years later, you know, they had to try to make real something that isn't real.
How come Bubba's wearing a mask?
He's at work.
Does it work, Jeremy?
I'm going out on the floor and I got my
Oh,
gloves. on.
sorry.
I hate to wear these gloves.
Yeah, but you're in your house.
No,
He's at work.
He's at the office.
Oh, okay, then you're excused.
That's funny.
You know, sometimes when I think about God, I think about connection, but in a very big sense,
Right.
not just among us as humans, but with all other consciousness.
Right.
And when I think about seeing God's back, it's like, sometimes I imagine that like the Hubble telescope, when it shows us about the universes around us,
Right.
that maybe we couldn't even sustain looking at God's face. Maybe all we could,
That's why God is the sun, because you can't look at the sun.
maybe all right, maybe all you can sustain is looking at God's back, because the face would just be overwhelming.
Oh, okay. Very good point, because at the very end of this Torah portion, when Moses comes, you know, he does the second tablets because he broke the first ones over the golden calf incident. When Moses comes back down the mountain the second time with a new set of tablets, and the people look at him, they say in the Torah directly that his face has this glowing quality to it.
right.
So whatever Moses beheld, God's back, he didn't see the face, he didn't see God, he just saw God's back, and spoke with God clearly, because there's quotation marks, there's dialogue, they're going back and forth. But whatever he beheld up there was so powerful and so magnificent that it caused his face to have this glow, so that when he was back down the mountain and speaking to the people again, they could see it. That was something very real that the people could see, which is interesting.
Do you think he looked at God's face?
He can't. God said no. He asked God and God said no.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, God was very adamant about, no, that's not going to happen. He said, you'll see my back. That's all you're going to see. That's it.
Okay.
But as Sheila said, we hear the word back, and then we think immediately we conjures up the image of a human back, or I suppose you could look at a dog or a cat or something like that, or any other animal. But as I said, maybe that was just the writers of the Torah trying to put it in some kind of term that we would understand. And then I liked Bubba's comment, well, if we see someone's back, we can then follow that person if we so choose, if we think that person is worth following. Or we could also say, I don't think that person is worth following, so the answer is no. So
then
God?
Who led the people? Who actually led the people? Did you get to that question?
Well, we're not.
When he said
this stops when Moses comes down the mountain, but ultimately Moses and God, because the first thing that Moses asks for in this Torah portion is for God's help. He does not want God to abandon him and say, I can't. Remember, Moses didn't want to do this anyway. At the very beginning, Moses was like, no. I stutter. I'm not a good speaker. I don't think I'm cut out for this job. But God convinces him, and how God has promised him in this Torah portion, God promises Moses, I will be with you. Yes, we had the whole golden calf thing. Yes, I was angry, but I will stay with you and I will be your partner in this. So Moses is going to be the physical leader, but he is doing it knowing that God is there helping him, because God did promise that to Moses in the beginning of the Torah portion here.
If you remember, Moses got an argument with his sons about leadership.
Right.
You know, and that what led to golden calf and all that. So
yeah, Moses just never ever really saw himself as a leader. I mean, he doubted himself and really became, I mean, as we look at him now as this great leader of the people, you know, out of Egypt with the whole Exodus story, what we just did with the Passover Seder. But this was something Moses never really aspired to, never really wanted in his life. He had to be thoroughly convinced that, okay, I guess I can do this. And now he made God say to him, yes, I will be with you. I will be with you as you do this. But if you're going to have
to think, Tim, of the expression, I've got your back. Someone has your back.
Right.
follow them and they're gonna take care of it. They'll lead you and help you.
Exactly.
I've
Yeah, I
got
mean,
your back.
yeah, that's a good.
What did Sheila say? I didn't understand.
So when you
When
tell
someone
somebody,
says, I've got your back, Tammy, it's like saying, I will help you, follow me, I will lead you. I will take care of your problem. I've got your
Yeah.
back.
exactly. Yeah. So we use that
Okay.
phrase in modern terminology.
Okay,
when we say
that
something.
makes, that's true.
Right.
Okay.
I have a
Okay.
question.
Sure.
Hi. So we're going back to Moses, and we say that he wasn't a born leader, but how much of that was that he's had self-doubt, and how much of that is humility? I always wonder,
Well,
was he just humble?
some of it could be humility, like you're choosing me of all people, because he at the beginning when he has the first encounter with God, he doesn't really think that it should be him. So is that because he's too humble to think I'm not capable of such grandiose
Right.
plans? Could be partly that. But one of the first things he does too is say, I'm not a speaker. I stutter. I can't make speeches in front of people because that's just my, way of speaking. But God won't listen. God says, don't, no, you can do this. I mean, I think a lot of us think about a time in your life when you had to lead, in some way. And I think for me, I know at times I'm like, well, I think this is beyond me, but somehow you find the will, the strength, but you want people to have your back. As Sheila said, you want people to support you. And if you've got the support, then you can pretty much, get through it. And I guess now Moses has made clear, or God has made clear to Moses, yes, I will be there with you. You will see me in the acts I perform, in my acts of goodness, I will be there. So Moses, I mean, if you're going to have a co-pilot, I think God is a pretty good one to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Moses, it's interesting. I think there is some humility in Moses. I think there's some doubt in Moses. Like we all have some self-doubt. You try, when you go out to, try something new, am I going to be able to do this? I don't know. So.
But Moses seemed like he had so much strength, more than an average person. I don't know what it was about him.
Well, I mean, ultimately, we do see him as a symbol of strength when we look at the Torah, but that wasn't there at the beginning. And who knows how much of it Moses even in himself believed, it worked out. I don't know that Moses ever congratulates himself or becomes, patting himself on the back. I think all the way through the Torah, right to the bitter end, when he can't even go into the promised land. Remember, he can look in, but he can't go. Even then, he still has this sense of humility, like, I'm not sure I believe that I really did this or accomplished.
Why couldn't he go in, Tim?
Pardon me?
Why couldn't Moses go into the promised land?
Moses, he gets, God gets angry with Moses. I'm trying to remember what it was. He tells him, you're going to take the people to the border, but you yourself can't go in. Then he has to find, Aaron, and he sends the spies to check it out to make sure that it's okay that they go.
But why
Didn't
didn't Moses do something where
Yeah.
God, he
anger him?
forsake God, and God said, your punishment is you will not
Right.
go forward?
Yes, it was a moment of anger. We see moments of anger between God and Moses different times in the Torah, and in most cases, God is like, okay, God is very forgiving of it. But like he said, I only have so much mercy. As he told Moses, my mercy has limits. And he reached his limit and said, okay, you are not going to be able to enter into the promised land. And then Moses gives his big, long speech at the end of his life, reminding the people of everything they're supposed to do, reiterating all of the covenant with God. And they're going to go, but he's not.
That's sad.
What it was?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you said it yourself when Moses sent spies into the promised land. God didn't like that because he felt like that Moses was not trusting God's word.
Oh.
Well,
Did Bubba say that God felt like Moses didn't trust him? I'm sorry, I couldn't
that's
hear.
what he said, that and so he needed to send spies just to verify that it was okay. But if we remember, Moses sends 12 spies and only 2 come back and say it's okay to go in. The other 10 are like, no, no, no. This is a horrible, horrible place. We can't go. We'll be, eaten alive if we go here because they're giants and they're strong and they're powerful. It's only 2 spies that come back and tell Moses that, yeah, I think it's okay. I think we can do this. So those two spies perhaps trusting in God more because God said, I'll be with you. This is your land. I'm going to see to it that you will be fine. So they come back with the story of, yeah, we can go and we'll be okay. And the other 10 are like, yeah, I don't think so.
So is that, do you think that influenced Dr. King when he says, I see the promised land, I may not get there with you? Sort of like, isn't that Moses? I may not go with you, but go ahead.
Well, we know for a fact that, Dr. King was very, very influenced by the Torah. I mean, he frequently quoted from the Torah,
The Old
from the
Testament.
prophets. And so was it prophetic of him to say that? Certainly was. I don't know if he had some gut level feeling that he wasn't going to make it, but everyone else, you got to keep going. You got to keep moving on. Certainly we see elements of that when we listen to his speeches, for sure, because he was always very eloquently quoting from the prophets, quoting from the Torah.
I hadn't thought about that till now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up, but it does make for a very interesting parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always thought he had some intuition, but now I think, well, maybe he's influenced by that story. I've been the leader. I may not go with you into the promised land, but you go ahead, even though I've led you up to now.
Right. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. Even if I'm not there with you, to walk along with you, to cross the border, you've got to keep going.
Yes.
That makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. If you had a personal audience with God, I'm just going to throw
What
this.
happened? Everybody froze.
You have a personal audience with God. What's one question? You could ask God one question. What would be the question you would ask God? You'll get one, only one.
You have to think.
I always wonder, how could a merciful God loves allow children?
Why do children have to die so young?
Hey, Tammy, have to be born with no legs, no arms, diseases, whatever.
Right.
What did they do? Unless you believe in Edgar Casey's The Karmic Debt, that whole theory, you've heard of that.
Yeah.
It just makes no sense to me. How could a gracious, good God allow that?
Good
I
question.
always wondered. I don't know. Yeah, of course I don't know, but it always bothered me.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't know what God would say. I'm not going to pretend to know.
Exactly. What would be the reason? I don't know.
Anybody else? What question? If you could ask God one question, only one, what would be the question you'd want to pose to God?
Mine is kind of similar. I don't understand suffering, and on a broad basis of good people, children,
Okay.
anybody else,
Jenny.
Holocaust and all that. And
Thanks.
is it because this is really not heaven, so to speak?
What
Are we
would be
going
your
on to a
question
better
about
place?
God?
Another good question. Yeah, I heard you. Why do people have to suffer? Why is there all the suffering in things like the Holocaust and similar situations? Why do we have to have so many people go through so much tragedy and trauma? Good question, and I would love to know what God would say.
Or I would ask him, if I had
Go
one
ahead,
question, I would ask him, why can't I see you?
So you want to have the same chutzpah Moses had and said, hey, I want to just have one look, just one look.
Just one look. I don't care if you never grant me anything again. Just let me see that you're there.
Okay.
Yo, God.
Ask how can I manifest God in the world? That's what I would ask him. How do I do that? But I don't want a long teaching. I just want like a Zoom.
I want your quickest, briefest answer.
Right. I want like a one syllable Ah,
I don't know how, that would be really impressive to see if God could answer that in one syllable. I would really like to hear
I'm
that.
sure that God could do that, but I don't know that he would.
I know I couldn't even try to answer that
How are you?
question.
Oh, sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
have another question to mine. I don't know if anybody heard, but God, can you tell me that there is an afterlife and I will be with my loved ones?
That was one of my other questions. Will I be able to see my mother or father when I die?
Well, that's exactly,
I don't know. That's a good question
You
too.
don't know.
since we don't know. I mean, it's a great question. I mean,
I already believe that. I
Yeah.
know, right, Rena?
but in Judaism,
I believe it.
that's
Yeah?
one of the biggest
I
arguments.
do.
We still argue about the afterlife in Reform Judaism and all branches of Judaism. Just what does happen?
right.
We don't know, and it's a mystery. I mean, we are taught. I mean, as Rabbi Haas has taught us, it's all about living the best life you can now. Living in the here and now. Life is so important in Judaism. Live the best life you can according to the values, principles of the Torah of Judaism.
Crazy.
And then everything's supposed to take care of itself after that. If you do that, and not that you won't make mistakes, we all make mistakes, but if you daily try to live the best values and ethics of our faith, then everything's supposed to take care of itself afterward. What that means, I don't know. I don't have an answer. It would be nice if somebody could tell us, if somebody could just come back and say, here's what happens.
Exactly.
And you always hear this remark, why do the good people die first?
Well,
That's what
Right, Tammy.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, you always hear that. Everybody always says that.
Why do the
Why do
good
the
die
good die
young?
young?
right.
Right.
Well, yeah, some of our, even in history, some great leaders that we've had who die young, when they still could have had so much, to give.
Yeah.
But in all fields, people who are in
Right. Why does that
the
happen?
life,
Exactly.
they're offering what they have to offer to the world, doing their part, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they're taken from us, way too soon. I don't know the answer either. I mean, these are all questions that are great because none of us can answer them, but we'd all like to know. I think if we're honest, we'd all like to be able to have the answer because maybe it would help us sleep better at night, if we had the answers to these questions. But I don't have an answer. I do as much thinking and pondering about these issues as you do.
Yeah.
And lastly, we're in this kind of, as Cantor Berger said in his Devar Torah for this portion, that we're kind of, in this time period with this pandemic where nothing is the way it used to be. We don't have a sense of normalcy. And quite honestly, when it is behind us, will we ever really return to the same normal that we had before? If you listen to the medical experts, no. I don't know if you heard, one thing that you're never ever supposed to do for the rest of your life is shake someone's hand ever again. Dr. Fauci.
Really?
Dr. Fauci said we've got to let that social grace go. He said the shaking of hands has just got to go by the way. So
And hugging too?
well, does that mean hugging? I mean, a lot of us are huggers by nature. We are. We're demonstrative people. We like to show.
A kiss.
Right. I mean, we show our affection for our family and friends. And is that going to be different? What kind of guidelines are we going to have to live under if we're trying to maintain a healthy world? I don't have the answer. So
Tim will be like the Asians and they bow.
Well,
Namaste.
yeah,
Hello.
a sign of respect.
Changing a whole moray. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, none of us know exactly what the world on the other side of this will look like. I know that I read in a couple of different things. They said, the idea of big music concerts and festivals, gone.
Over.
Never again.
What's going to happen in theaters? I mean, when you go to a theater to see a play, or even a movie theater, you're sitting very close to people that you don't know.
Very harsh, very harsh. It's going to be traumatic for all of us.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, no theater, no concerts, no movies, what about sitting in mikvah?
That's not good.
What about sitting in mikvah Israel?
Or when you go to worship, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah.
No, that's not good.
No.
oh.
I mean, the thing is, we are a community there of people to support one another.
We're gonna
And I
have
mean,
to
you
build-
know how
what
it
we're
is.
gonna have to do is build large stadiums so we could all sit 6 feet apart.
That's gonna
At mikvah?
be.
No,
Enlarge the sanctuary.
Oh,
Right.
right, the sanctuary.
But I mean, even in restaurants, they're talking about how restaurants are gonna have to have more space between tables. So
Oh my God.
a restaurant that could seat 80 people will now maybe be only seating
40 or 50, yeah.
Yeah, which means you'll wait longer to get
there
in.
goes the economy.
Well, it's huge. It's huge. Look at Savannah. We are a tourist destination. We have so many people who depend on hotels for their livelihood. They work in the hotels, they work in the restaurants and the nightclubs and things. All of that. I mean, I just read, I don't know, there was Savannah Morning News or whatever, that in the hotel industry right now, almost 95% of the workforce is unemployed.
Yeah.
95%.
That's a lot.
It's huge because, and this is our season.
Devastating.
This is our season. You know, people love to come to Savannah in the spring because it's
But
beautiful.
what happens to our tours at Mikveh Israel?
Right.
Yeah, we don't know yet. We don't know yet.
But you can
I
limit
think like
them.
some of that would depend on whether they get a vaccine
Exactly. Which we're all, of course, hoping for.
and whether people go get vaccinated.
Right.
Well, the
How
other
do you
thing too,
know?
they're trying to figure
It
out,
happened for a long time.
but yeah, they said it could be years down the road. The other thing they're
Well,
trying to figure out is,
do you remember not as a child, like lining up and getting the polio
Yeah.
vaccine?
Yeah.
I remember,
You can
I
vaccinate a
remember.
lot of people all at once if you're so inclined.
well, and I think they would. I think if that it came down to it, they would figure out a way to get it out as fast as they possibly could to the general public. I mean, it would be, they're also wondering too, is because once you have this, are you then immune? They don't know
Maybe
that either.
not.
We don't know that. Well,
It
this is
could
a
come
question,
back in the fall too.
right?
Let me ask you a question. What happened after people had, when they had the polio and they had the N1S1? What did the people do after that?
What do you
You
mean?
mean
after-
after the-
Wait,
I mean,
say that
they
again,
had
Tammy?
I don't think any. I don't remember.
They,
I don't
they had
remember the S1, the swine flu. I don't remember any behavior change once we had the vaccine. It was like everybody just went back to however they were, but you were able to get the vaccine.
Right.
Is what I remember. I don't remember. I didn't shake hands when they did polio. I was too young.
no, but I mean, even
Like
when they
all
had,
of you were too young.
when they had the polio vaccine, if this thing is so deadly, you'd have to definitely, everyone would have to be vaccinated.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or the majority.
Right, right.
So Tammy, until that time, this is the way we have to live until there is a vaccine. So that's
gonna
very drastic.
That's gonna be hard for me because I want to hug everybody.
I do too. I know.
Well,
I
this
know.
takes
I
us-
love- Yeah.
This
I'm
kind of
with
takes
you
us
on
back
that.
to where we started, because when we started the discussion, we were talking about God, you know, whether that's nature, Mother Earth, you know, is this some sort of anger where we've exhausted God's mercy, as he told us in the Torah portion, I have mercy, but I will get exhausted. You will take the limits. If this is what's happening, then we're seeing this change in the earth and the pollution levels are lowering and things of that sort. Maybe then there will be something that will let us see just how far back to normal we've had. And we just don't know it yet. We just don't know what that's going to be. We haven't been given that enlightenment yet at this point. I don't know. It's a kind of back to where we started. You know, God is powerful, merciful, compassionate, and all those things, but God also gave all of us brains, and he gave all of us a mind, and the best minds and brains right now are trying to figure out an answer to this pandemic to help us get through it, you know. And
All aspects of normal were not necessarily beneficial. That's what you're saying about the pollution, right?
Right.
That was not a beneficial thing.
No, not at all. No,
so maybe some ways we won't go back to normal will be good.
Truly,
Well, the new normal.
They'll be godly.
Right, new normal.
Normal.
No, I'm up for a new normal. Working like a crazy woman was not normal.
Well, good point. we are in this country, you know, we have that workaholic mentality, which is not always a good thing. Not always a good thing for any of us.
No.
Did somebody just log off? Or we're not, are we done with the session? We're not done, right?
No, I haven't dismissed you yet. I
Yeah,
have
he
not.
didn't dismiss us yet.
Bubba got off.
My old teacher days come up. No, I have not dismissed you yet.
I think Bubba left.
Well, he's
left.
at work, so he may have had to
Bubba left.
go do something. All right, any last thoughts, comments from anybody? This has been a good discussion. I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
Tim,
This
you know who I
This was
think,
a very good topic.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know who he is, God? God has spoken to one person, and that is Dr. Fauci.
well, I hope you're right.
I like that.
I hope so.
Let me ask everybody a question. Dr. Fauci's voice, was it always like that?
Yeah,
Like
he's
very
nice
raspy and like,
Yeah, yeah.
Nice
he's from
and
Brooklyn, he's
Ah.
from Brooklyn, but he sounds like he's very sick.
I think he's
That's
getting a lot of
his
sleep
voice.
right now.
Not sick.
I mean, but he always sounded like that.
As far as I remember.
How do we know? I never heard him before.
I
But
never heard.
he was very, very vocal way back in the
Yeah.
beginning of the HIV/AIDS crisis.
Oh, I didn't know.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
with Dr.
Sound like
Fauci.
that? Did he sound like that then?
Yes.
Wow.
When he was a younger man, yes.
He's
Wow.
extremely
So he's been around. He's seen this country through, you know, some of the other epidemics we've had. He started, but when he got the country through the HIV/AIDS thing, and he was very reasonable then when people were panicking and the whole Rock Hudson thing, he was the voice of reason, and he really is the one who calmed the country down. And I
How old
remember
did you
him.
say he is?
Pardon me?
He's 80, I think.
Oh, really?
I think he just turned 80.
Yeah,
Wow.
Really?
Bless
he's
him.
been, you know, been around for quite some time.
Wow.
In this, and,
I'll look
you
it
know,
up.
Yeah.
let's just hope that, you know, his voice of reason prevails, and that, you know,
Yeah,
because he's somebody that you can trust. When he says something, I listen.
Yeah.
that's true. When he
Yeah.
speaks, we listen.
Exactly, because he's not an alarmist. He gives you the facts the way you need to hear them. You know, they're not always pretty, but we need to hear them anyway. You know,
I'm sorry, he's 79 right now.
Yeah.
Well, he's very
Okay.
close.
Very close, right.
Well, thank
He,
you, everybody.
he was born on December 24th, 1940.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Are we saying goodbye?
We're gonna
Tim.
say goodbye.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank
That was a
you.
wonderful class.
I hope I see you all next Friday on my lovely computer screen.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Terry.
And
Very
next Friday, I won't be late.
Okay, I'll give you a
Thank
pass on
Tammy.
this one.
I'm
Shabbat
gonna give
shalom,
you
everybody.
protection.
Shabbat
Yeah.
shalom.
Bye.
Shabbat
Shabbat
shalom.
shalom.
Shabbat shalom.